Buongiorno, sono Clara
Good
Mavella.
morning. My name is Clara Mavella from the Cultural Entrepreneurship Institute, Berlin. Today we are in Naples at the Archaeological Museum to interview the director, Mr. Giulierini. Welcome, Mr. Giulierini. Good morning, Mr. Giulierini. So we made it and we are here. I'm very happy you found some time to talk to us about this wonderful jewel, which is this museum. You're the director of this museum. Would you introduce yourself? Yes, my name is Paolo Giulierini. I am an archaeologist. I came to Naples on the 1st of October 2015, so I've been living here for a few months. I have the privilege to be the director of, I think, the biggest archaeological museum in Europe. And, of course, I already made up my mind about how we may trigger this uh, process of renewal of what is truly a temple of classical culture. Before going to the quick of the matter we will be dealing with in our conversation, can you first of all tell us, how did you decide to take up to archaeology? What was your inspiration, your motivation? Well, as a child, I oscillated a lot between paleontology and archaeology, as all children do. I developed a love for dinosaurs. But then the fact that I was living in an Etruscan city of Tuscany, Cortona, allowed me to uh, to get a first-hand experience of ancestors, of the findings, of the excavations. So I developed a passion. I became passionate about uh, archaeology and Etruscology, and I studied in Florence. And then I specialized in museum management, first with an Etruscan museum, and now with a Roman museum, more oriented to Roman art and exhibits. Can you briefly introduce the different layers and stratifications of ancient peoples living in Italy before the Romans? Because we usually know about Romans only well. Italy is a composite mosaic of peoples before the globalization carried out by Rome. Rome conquered the whole territory of Italy. Beforehand, we had very important civilized people, in particular the Etruscans, who ruled the central part of Italy, especially Tuscany. To the south, the Latins, and then more to the south, even further south, the Greeks, who colonized the whole Magna Graecia. In the north, we had the Celts. They occupied northern Italy and also spread to Germany, to France, where they were known as Gauls, and to Spain, where they were known as Celtiberians. So this is very rich, very composite mosaic. But at the point the Latins start to expand throughout the peninsula, and in the end, Rome becomes the ruler not only of Italy but of the entire Mediterranean basin. But tell me, can we say that Italy is an open air museum? How can we say the museum stops here and here the historical findings start? Where is the border? Well, that's true. The main characteristic of the Italian museums lies in the fact that more often than not, there is no difference between the museum as a container and the territory, the surrounding territory. Just to give you an example, Naples keeps many findings coming from Pompeii. So we have the content, which is located in Pompeii, the ancient city, and the findings that are preserved here in this museum. The main feature of Italian museum is the fact that they are closely intertwined with the territory, and above all, the landscape is made up of many strata, many layers of ancient civilizations. So the territory holds medieval, Renaissance, findings in an extremely elegant composition and in a very enchanting landscape, which is truly the result of all these uh, contributions. Okay, now we are in Naples, but before talking about your work proper, can you briefly outline the history of the Kingdom of the Two Sicilies? Naples was the capital city of the south of Italy. Well, yes, in the new restyling of this museum, we wanted to recover the Neapolitan tradition, the tradition of Naples as the capital of the Kingdom of the Two Sicilies. Not to diminish the role of the museum as an archaeological museum, but rather to highlight the fact that Naples was a big capital, ruling, controlling, keeping under control the south of Italy as a whole. And before the reunification of the country, Naples was extremely modern. There was really a modernization process. Just think of the fact that the first railway was inaugurated here. If you think of the splendor of the Bourbon kings, Charles III built the royal palace in Caserta, another royal palace in Capodimonte, and many other works, such as the San Carlo Theatre. If you think of that, you understand that the travelers in the 18th century were right when they said that Naples was to be really compared and was on the same equal footing with Paris and London. If you walk in that city, you feel the grandeur of this city that was really a melting pot. It really mixed up many cultures. Within this context, we can really send a strong message. Here in this museum, we have collected the findings of archaeology, not only of Naples, which were found not only in Naples or excavated in Naples, but in the south of Italy as a whole. And also all the treasures and art pieces which were brought to the Bourbons by other members of the royal family. For example, the statues were brought by Elisabetta Farnese, born into the Farnese family. So here we gather all these art pieces thanks to the dowry of Charles' mother. Now, let us give an overview to those who do not understand or do not appreciate enough the importance of the historical heritage, the cultural heritage of a people. Why is it so important to preserve and conserve all these finds, all of these exhibits from the past? One might throw them away, for example, or dismiss them. Well, I believe that in Italy in particular, but nowhere in the world, should we cancel our memories, because the language itself we use in Italy, the language we speak, is nothing but a transformation of the Latin language. So we actually speak an ancient language that has evolved in a close connection and kinship with the Greek language. So the words itself that we utter in our language bring us back to the past, to the ancient world, and the whole landscape and the cultural heritage we walk through and live in Italy talks all this heritage talks about culture. Otherwise, we would just see statues, objects, which wouldn't convey any meaning to us because we wouldn't be able to grasp the values and understand the history that produced them. This is increasingly important and useful in this globalized society because the danger that can be caused by the fusion of so many peoples and cultures would be that of losing sight of our identity, of who we are. And especially museums are an extraordinary chance, give us a wonderful chance to look at back into the past. And by understanding the mistakes we made in the past, we might become better citizens because we have the wonderful chance and opportunity not to repeat the mistakes we made. But you told us that you've been living in Naples for the last few months. What's your feeling about this? Well, living in Naples is extraordinary. I come from Florence, which is as extraordinary as Naples, but living in Naples allows you to live in a much wider and far reaching dimension. You feel that it was a capital. There is a you I mean the citizens give you such a warm welcome. They are so open minded. You can eat delicious food. Pizza is the really the last thing I would mention because there are extraordinary food products of seafood or and then there are monuments, extraordinary monuments. But above all, there is such a lively and vibrant atmosphere. We might say that Naples is is a city which is in progress, which is always alive, as ebullient as the Vesuvius. And I want to say that in my personal experience, I've seen that the usual corny stereotypes, such as the images of violence or waste, are one side of the city. But in Italy, we focus exclusively on these problems and we never look at the other side of the coin, which is absolutely extraordinary. So I'm absolutely happy to live here. I was welcomed so warmly. I've been really embraced by this city, and I'll do all my best just to give back what I've been receiving. What is your opinion, for example, about your working day? This is important for young people who would like, for example, to work, to do the job you do. Well, this museum does not allow you to take many breaks. I start very early in my working day at 7:30 with a wonderful breakfast, a nice espresso coffee. And this is the nice start I get in the morning. Then a couple of hours are needed to sign all the paperwork, bureaucratic paperwork, to do the paperwork, and then we meet delegations from all over the world. We get in touch with other directors of other museums because this museum has incredible, very big vaults. We have a lot of things in storage, a lot of finds in storage, and whoever wishes to work must come to Naples. This is a very enriching moment because we meet other experts, we exchange our ideas, and then we go. For example, after that, I go to the restoration laboratory and I just check the way in which our findings are restored, the exhibits, the art pieces, because we must send them abroad for on loan, and then we get in touch also with the public just to see uh, what they like or what we may improve. I would like to propose an image and a way of being a director of a museum which is open to the public. And it's important for us also to be on the social networks because it is very important to readjust our proposal based on the desires and wishes and demands of those who come to Naples. When we entered the museum, we've seen that this is an enormous palace. Can you tell us what we can find in here, in this building? This building was built in the 17th century. It was the palace of the cavalry. Then it underwent changes in the 18th century. At a certain point, it was the Palazzo degli Studi, the Palace of the Studies, and it then became the Astronomical Observatory. In the second half of the 18th century, King Charles decided to bring here the findings excavated in Pompeii here, in this building. At that point, in this building, the whole Farnese collection of the Roman statues that embellished, in particular, the Caracalla's thermal baths. Uh, and they were brought to Naples as a dowry by the mother of Charles III, and you can see them surrounding around me. And then the whole findings found in Pompeii. I would only mention the world-renowned mosaic of Alexander the Great, and of course all the paintings from Herculaneum and Pompeii. So an incredible wealth, an overview of the paintings of the ancient times, of the Department of Paintings. And then we have the collection from the south of Italy and a number of statues and findings coming from Magna Graecia. We have more than 10,000 painted vessels from Greece and Magna Graecia, one of the most important collections of painted vessels, and these vessels are waiting to be exhibited again in 2017 in the new department of Magna Graecia. On top of that, we hold more than 1 million findings in our vaults in storage. We send them on loan to hold exhibitions all over the world. We have more than 40 exhibitions in New York, in Germany, Hungary. I mean, the Archaeological Museum of Naples disseminates its culture throughout the world. And this is the strength of our museum. This is our force. It's the only one with this incredible, very big, huge vaults. It can create exhibitions without impoverishing the permanent collections. Another question about what you hold in this museum. I heard about a special secret cabinet, erotic cabinet. Can you speak about it for those who are interested in it? Well, this is a curiosity. It's very fascinating curiosity of this museum. Well, the true secret cabinet has been designed in the 18th century style with wall paintings in a very elegant setting. These are all the findings found in, especially in Pompeii, and from the time of Charles III onwards, they were not deemed as decent enough to be shown to the general public. So they were locked away in cabinets that they were shown only to some intimate friends of the king. In particular, some frescoes were detached from the lupanars, the brothels of Pompeii, that show a sort of a Western Kama Sutra. Uh, but they're quite ordinary in our eyes today. We're not ashamed of looking at them, but today we look at these paintings very much in the way they were looked at in the ancient world, a sort of ode to joie de vivre. It was Christendom that became judgmental about these findings. In particular, I would talk about and focus on this sculpture, Pan copulating with a goat. It was forbidden, absolutely forbidden, because Charles, the Christian kings of Spanish origin, they would admit of homosexuality and prostitution, but the unnatural copulation of men with animal was absolutely forbidden and not accepted. One of the most secret and precious things is precisely this statue, and it's worthwhile visiting it. Now, since we are talking about these subjects, we are sitting here among wonderful statues. These are nudes. Most of them are nudes. Recently, Islamic statesmen visited Rome, and the nudes were covered with cloth, with some clothes. Would you do that in such a case like this one? Well, as a museum, we work a lot on intercultural projects. We are very open to other communities, even Islamic communities, the Islamic community in Naples, so that they may understand the Western culture. And we often show how the Roman culture was really so affected and influenced by the Oriental culture. But this must not lead us to make the mistake of changing our culture vis-à-vis the values of other cultures which do not accept nudity. We believe that nudity must be seen and appreciated because covering a nude would not allow us to understand the vision of an ancient civilization that looked at the human body as something beautiful. There's no shame in being nude. There is it exalts the man and the heroic aspect of nudity. On that occasion, Naples published on all the social networks the famous statue of the Callipygian Venus, which means the Venus of the beautiful buttocks, which is really one of the most treasured showpieces of our museum. We used it as a logo because this is a beautiful shape, an ode, a hymn to life. We respect all other civilizations, but we demand respect for ourselves too. Now, since you mentioned this word, after we've been speaking for a while, you live amid this beauty and in so many shapes that takes on so many shapes and forms. How can we talk about beauty in archaeology? What is beauty all about? What do you mean by beauty? What do you point to as beautiful? We must not be misled by the way in which experts look at beauty in a museum. This is a kind of beauty which belonged also to the tradition of the Grand Tour, of all those big experts coming even from Germany to Italy to appreciate the classical study. This is a kind of beauty which may certainly cause the Stendhal syndrome, but we have learned to look at the ancient world even through the lens of the modern critical thinking. What does this mean? This means that the mosaic of Alexander the Great, for example, or these statues, uh, are also the result of the labor of so many men who were also exploited to produce and to create these masterpieces that could be then enjoyed by the happy few. So, what do we mean by true beauty? True beauty is a museum which exhibits extraordinary works of art, but also teaches young people to be beautiful inside themselves and to be able to read and interpret history in order to understand what was important and beautiful in history. One example for all, for example, democracy, which was invented in Greece, and what must be condemned. And there's history, for example, the expansionism of the Roman Empire, which implied and entailed the destruction of many peoples. I just want to quote the famous sentence by Tacitus. When Tacitus referred to the presence of Rome, the conquest of Rome in Britannia, he said, "They make a desert and call it peace." And this sentence became a motto in the Vietnam War. Now, this aspect, this side of the ancient world is not beautiful, so we must couple aesthetic beauty with the important and beautiful values of the ancient world. Okay, fine. Let's turn to entrepreneurship. Uh, it is often said that the invaluable Italian cultural landscape heritage may really be profitable, much more than oil. Well, what do you think about that? I'm one of the 20 new directors appointed in museums in Italy, and the Ministry of Culture, the Cultural Heritage, entrusted us with the task of creating museums that are self supporting. And we finance our work with some financing from the ministry, with exhibitions, but we also organize meetings, symposia, and dinners inside the museum. And we try to attract new sponsors, companies. So the potential of the cultural heritage lies in the fact that it may create jobs. And this is not a mission impossible, it is possible. And this change in our legislation, the recent change in our legislation, allows us to do this. We must get out of the role of an archaeologist who deals only with art. Today, a director of a museum must deal with art, yes, but at the same time, the director must yield profits, produce wealth, because only by this token shall we be able to enhance and preserve ancient art. We must be able to generate profits by these institutions. And in Italy, this is possible. Oh, but this is wonderful. One more thing. What do you think about entrepreneurs who sponsor the restoration or regeneration of works of art, such as the Colosseum, which was sponsored by Della Valle? Well, right now, during these days, some important huge changes have been made, namely a simplification of the rules and regulations. From the next week on, it will be much easier to be sponsored by private subjects. What is important is that at the time when the private subject uh, becomes part of a public good, may the private subject may use that image for correct and appropriate purposes without any debasement of the cultural heritage. But I believe that the role played by the private sector is crucial, and it must go hand in hand with the public contribution and sector. What should absolutely be avoided is the fact that we might try and entrust only the private sector with the ownership and the direction of the public works, public museums, because there's always a private interest which may prevail. So we must monitor and check the activity of the private sector in order to reach and strike the right balance. You have mentioned Pompeii many times. Pompeii is governed by the state, is administered by the government, but there are some big problems, blight in areas of blight in Pompeii. Can you tell about this? Something about this? Once in a lifetime, you must go and stop in Pompeii and Herculaneum, because their discovery really gave rise to great, incredible interest in the ancient world, even more than the discovery of Greece. So, stopping at Pompeii means to try and go at the root of the Western civilization. Pompeii, together with the Colosseum, attracts the highest number of visitors. So it's really an asset. And it's a case of an experiment of an open air archaeological park. And it's very difficult to preserve that park with that kind of extraordinary conservation. It's not a question of how many square meters or hectares are preserved. We are talking about the preservation of the only city that has preserved all through the millennia the frescoes, the roofs. I mean, all that could be seen 2,000 years ago. So it's a sort of a snapshot of the past. So, and we must be very careful, because Pompeii is always exposed to the press and to the media. Somehow, the fact that a little wall collapses becomes the big news of the day, and a little is known about what has been done in the last few years. That is to say, a gradual and a steady recovery of all the insulae of the cities. It's very difficult to manage Pompeii, but there's no such thing as Pompeii. There's no other Pompeii all over the world. So you cannot use any criterion taken from other experiences. We must work in the field and really be very careful and looking at difficulties and at the extraordinary potentials. Of course, we have a natural connection with Pompeii, because in the Naples Museum there are all the frescoes, all the artifacts from Pompeii. So I hope that very soon indeed we will be able to sell one ticket only, so as to unify the cultural and archaeological offer to the visitors who come to Campania. How can we as citizens contribute to the preservation of this cultural heritage for the generations to come? Well, I believe that citizens must help us and join us in this commitment to the preservation of the cultural heritage. First of all, they should take their children to the museums and to the archaeological parks. It is absolutely crucial to teach the new generations the lessons of history and how to understand in history. And we should promote these initiatives and ask the teachers and help the teachers to dwell and go deeper into the study of history. And we should also invite them to take part in all the initiatives taken by the museums and the archaeological parks, if necessary, by also reporting the facts that are negative or dangerous, both in museums and in surrounding landscape. In particular, I'm referring to situations in which illegal buildings, new developments that are not allowed and that mar the landscape, destroy the landscape. At that point, in that case, the citizen must turn into a politician and be brave enough to report these facts that cancel our identity. A museum belongs to citizens first and then to its director, and only together, only if we are united, shall we win this bet. Thank you. Among all the fascinating things you said, there's one thing I do not understand or grasp totally. You said that Elisabetta Farnese was the mother of Charles III, and she brought to the Bourbon kings as a dowry all these statues. So, in the past, these objects were personal belongings of individuals. Well, you must know that in Italy, the legislation on the cultural heritage was passed very, very uh, early as the Renaissance time in the 16th, 17th century, especially in Rome. Some edicts were uh, uh, decreed by the popes. They tried to avoid the diaspora of the cultural assets. Nonetheless, since we are talking about incredibly outstanding figures, dynasties, kings, we know that the management of the cultural heritage up until the national reunification in 1860 was always in the hands of the kings or the aristocracy. That's why these collections were owned by the kings. Only after the national reunification did this process become complete. I mean, was totally perfected and came to its final version. I mean, was finalized. So Charles III did that, but the same thing happened in Europe. If you think of the Tsars or in France with the foundation of the Louvre Museum. This is a process that happened in all the nation states all over Europe. This is really interesting. We will go back to this another time. I wanted to ask you, should you be able to tap more resources? What would you like to do? What is your vision for the future? Well, we are already endowed with enough resources, but should I get more resources, I would like certainly. I'd like to upgrade the communication system of the museum, starting from the descriptive texts down to the technological devices. And I would like to improve the services offered to visitors. We've designed a big project. We will have a cafeteria here in Naples, a restaurant with starred chefs, with the Neapolitan cuisine, offering the Neapolitan cuisine. I think that we will take up this challenge by offering art, but also by providing services, because the visitor coming to an Italian museum must preserve a very nice memory, pleasant memory of this experience. Now, this is a very competitive field at the international level. Even the Italian museums must take this big step forward. Together with the art offer, the artistic offer, we need also services. When the visitor is fulfilled, then the visitor preserves a wonderful memory of his experience. Can you tell something about your job, about museums? Can you say something to young people who wish to work in museums and archaeology? What would you recommend? I don't want to be pessimistic. I think we are going through a period of revival of the cultural heritage in Italy. Should I bet on the leading sector, which will be in 20 years, the one that may create jobs and produce wealth for Italy? Well, I would bet on cultural heritage and tourism, because our country has gone through a long industrial crisis. Our country is trying to revive and to bet on fashion and design, but I would certainly invite young people to study culture, the cultural heritage. What counts is that these studies must be very rigorous, very serious. They must include also the study of classical languages. You cannot be an archaeologist without studying the Latin and Greek language. So, a rigorous, it's very serious education, which must also include the study of foreign languages. By this token, shall we be able to train professionals which in the near future will be able to find jobs in this sector? I think that there is no other hope. This is the only hope for Italy. We can only bet on tourism, culture, fashion, wine, and food. These are the leading sectors for us, and we are really leaders in the world. Well, the beautiful, the good, and the true. Now, since you've been living in Florence and amid beauty, history, the Renaissance, works of art, can you tell us what is important? What are the important things in life? I believe that in life it is important to be persons who are sensitive and respectful towards other people. I don't want to be banal, but I've met so many art experts or archaeologists who were not mm, acceptable in terms of their humanity and professionalism. I mean, those who deal with the cultural heritage must certainly have a deep love for the heritage, but he or she must care a lot for the possibility to be useful for our community, because we are men of this present time. The danger for those who deal with the cultural heritage uh, lies in the fact that we often look back into the past. We must be men of this present time, and by means of the cultural heritage, we must try to do good in the present time, at present. And doing good means also helping many young people to find new jobs. This is the true meaning of what you answered, of the question you answered me. Thanks a lot. I wish you all the best, and thank you. And I hope that this video will get a lot of viewers in Germany.